Welcome, listeners, and good evening. I'm your host, Bo, and this is SDP, Societal Deconstruction Podcast. We're a podcast for free thinkers, and we believe you should do what you want, when you want, and how you want. Live life on your terms. Life is precious. When you realize how important you are, you will always be happy. SDP is tuning in tonight from Central Florida, and we are in the dog days of summer, the middle of August, and it is hot and humid. I'm chilling tonight with Ross A. Schweitzer. We are super happy to have Ross here with SDP tonight. Hi, Ross. What's shaking tonight?
Oh, nothing much. Just hanging out, talking on a podcast, drinking a beer.
All right. Ross has his own podcast called The Daru Project, and he currently has 8 episodes. Congrats on The Daru Project.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. The Daru Project explores the universal timeless truths of God, the universe, and our tiny little part in it. Ross, what does Daru stand for?
Daru stands for, and I came up with this about 2 years ago, it stands for Disorganized Anti-Religion of the Universe. So I'll explain what that means. So the disorganized part is that there's no central structure to it. I came from a background in organized religion, and I'm not a fan for the most part. I believe that it can be helpful, but for myself personally, and I think a lot of people nowadays, it's not.
Absolutely.
That's the disorganized part. The anti-religion part is not that I'm against religion per se, but it's more of a nod to the antimatter in a scientific term or scientific sense of antimatter being the thing that keeps everything else together. So I wanted this to be something that would kind of counterbalance organized religion and kind of keep things in check in a sense, and give people that believe in God or believe in spirituality and want to explore things a venue outside of organized religion. And the universe, of course, is the universe, but I also believe that God and the universe are one and the same. God doesn't exist outside of the universe, but God is the universe, and we are all a part of that. So that's how I came up with that.
It's really interesting. I agree with you about God in the universe. I think I feel the same way about it. Yeah, one of the questions I was going to ask you later was, what do you think God actually is? So you answered that already.
Yeah, and I think one of the most powerful things, or especially realizations that I've had, is a lot of talk in Western society and in America is about division. And I think one of the things that is a major contributor to that is people's ideologically, philosophically, and religiously, they are put into these compartments. And the thing is, to me, the truth of it is that we're all part of the same energy that is God. We just have our physical beings that, we go through life in. But deep down, like, we're all part of the same fabric that is God. There shouldn't be those differences and divisions between us. There can be a different way to look at things, and that's fine, but there doesn't have to be that division or that hate towards the other side of things, because the other side of things is just a mirror to you. Like, we're all part of the same thing.
I agree with that. Like, one thing I've said before is that, I think we're all equal. We were all born the same way. We're all animals of the planet Earth. We're all the same under our skin color. There's no reason for any kind of divisions whatsoever. And I think that that's such an antiquated way of looking at things. And especially with the religion, I've never really been religious. I was raised it a little bit when I was little, but as soon as I discovered science, it didn't make a lick of sense to me. So I just kind of adopted my own way. And I didn't really admit that I didn't believe in God, like the religious God, until I was older, because I was afraid. If the lightning bolt was kind of strike me down, or I just didn't want anyone to give me any kind of an attitude, But I always kind of gone to the beat of my own drummer. But I think society tends to put us in boxes. It seems to want to just put everybody in a little box, or people have to be alike. It's kind of frustrating. One of the things I think about is, like, kids. Kids are so different. Kids learn differently. They act differently. And that's normal, right? But if a kid is learning differently or acting differently, they throw them on ADHD medication when they're like 5 years old.
Right.
I'm glad my kids didn't have any problems in school, because I would have never put them on that medication if somebody would have recommended it. No way. No way. You don't know what it does to their little developing brains.
Yeah, I think there can be some benefit from different things like that, but then also too there has to be, I think, especially like you said, very young. That can be, to me, it seems rather concerning. The other thing too is I just remember Albert Einstein saying words to the effect of, if you try to have a fish climb a tree, it's always going to feel like it's stupid. If kids learn in different ways, and people teach the way that they learn. So if a teacher is teaching in a certain way, maybe it's more written, or it could be more audio driven or video driven, but the kid might not necessarily take interest in that or learn that way, and then it's
Exactly.
looked at like, well, they're falling behind or they're stupid, and that's not the case, and then their self-esteem falls, and then the what once was a bright light with that child now isn't, because they think that there's something wrong, and there's nothing wrong. It's
Right.
just you're learning in a
Right.
different.
And everybody does. Like, I don't even realize this till I was older, but I learn in I guess like a visual / doing way. Like if somebody just sits there and talks to me and I'll go, I will listen to that for about 30 seconds, and then my mind is completely somewhere else. I don't listen to a damn thing they say. Nothing. I can't just listen to, yada, yada, yada. You got to show me. I got to touch it. I got to see it. I got to do it. And I'm a pretty intelligent person. But we all have, completely different ways of doing that. And I'm sure some kids need that medication. I'm sure that is a ADHD. I'm diagnosed with ADHD, so I'm not knocking it. I just think they go into it way too early, and they don't give kids a chance to be themselves.
Right. And that, I think, is kind of the crux of the issue. Is in general in Western society, we don't treat we treat symptoms, we don't treat root causes. And I
Right.
think that's kind of the issue. Is, well, if this child's life is, what is their home life like? What is their diet like? These other things. And if they're having, sugary beverages, if you will, and, lots of video games and, constant stimulation and overstimulation, how do you really know if the kid can focus or not focus?
Absolutely.
Like, eliminate some things that you can control first, and if the kid still is off at a certain age, whatever that age may be, then it's like, okay, at that point, why don't we see about trying some medication and see if that helps to kind of adjust a little bit. But to go straight into that without trying to deal with a core issue, to me, seems reckless.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they do that with a lot of things. And it just seems like they're just so quick to put anybody on medication for anything. And, it leads me to think that, the doctor's going to kick back from Big Pharma or something, because I don't understand any other reason why they'd be so fast to put people on all this medication. It's crazy. Or they just don't really have the patience to try to figure out deeper into it, or they just don't care. They just want their day to be over. And it's just easy to write a script and put the file away. I don't know. I don't think it's right.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a multi-layered thing. I think that some doctors, they have a large caseload, and it's like, okay, you're kind of a number, and they've got to get through their day. And also, too, there's certain ones that'll really take the time, and those ones are really great. And
True.
I don't think most of them are intending to do evil or do anything.
No, I don't
bad.
either.
But I do think that there is a certain, the way I look at it is, we always hold, as a society, we hold like doctors and police officers and these different jobs in a different light. But like, if you work in a regular facility or a regular place, you're going to have people that are going to really, really care. You're going to have people that don't give two shits about anything. And then you're going to have the middle, where it's just like, I just want to get through my day so I get home and see my family. And I think that's where most of like the doctors and stuff is like, well, this is everything that we got, here's the studies and the science. I read through it. It seems to make sense, so then they just kind of go with it because that's the accepted practice. But to me, everything starts at the top with that sort of stuff, and those people that are at the top, or that, whether it's our political system or there's a multi-layered, like I said, multi-layered, but to me it's kind of the downside of capitalism. I think capitalism could be great in certain aspects, but there's also unintended things that happen as a result, because what's driving all that is a pharmaceutical company that is a public corporation, and they are setting, their directive is, it's for the benefit of our shareholders. We have to grow quarterly. It's not even yearly or, over a decade. It's quarterly. Every 3 months, we've got to have better numbers than we had the month, 3 months before, or the year before. So it's a constant directive of how are we going to grow this, whether it's top line growth, bottom line growth, what have you. So a lot of times I think
and that really doesn't do it's not good for the greater good of people in general.
No, it's not.
Just for the good of the company.
Right, exactly. And the other thing is, there's 2 countries in the world that can advertise for pharmaceutical things or drugs, and it's America and New Zealand are the only 2 in the world that can advertise. So that in and of itself, to me, shouldn't be a thing. The amount of super specific things that get advertised on TV or radio is like, I've never heard of this thing. Hey, talk to your doctor about, this drug, and it's going to cure God knows what. And here's all these list of side effects, your left arm might pop off, but hey, you're going to be cured of whatever. Like, to me, that's not right. You should go to your doctor, say you have this, and then they give you what they think is their best recommendation. Not the other way around of, hey, we're giving you this, you push this. Even if they're not explicitly stating push it, it's still going to be like, well, I've got this documentation. Yeah, I just heard about this thing. Okay, here you go. Here, take care of that. So to me, it's not like, the 1800s or early 1900s, where it's like, hey, well, Johnny's sick and he can't get out of bed. Well, we'll send for the doctor, and they come to your house, and, we'll diagnose you, and, because I know you and I care about you. And we had a doctor that, Dr. Fabry, and he was wonderful because he didn't charge much. If you didn't have insurance or anything, like he would be like, okay, just give me $40. Like, you're fine. Like, he was great. He would prescribe you stuff if you really needed it, but he would also look into, like, how you as a person were, like, are you okay? You're doing all right? Bedside manner sort of a thing. And it made a huge difference. And I really enjoyed going to see him. He was a little peculiar at times, but for the most part, like, he was just you could tell, like, just a very genuine person. And he had made enough money throughout his career. He didn't care about, pushing a drug or anything like that. So people and doctors like that, I think, are
Excuse me,
just fantastic. But unfortunately, that's the minority. So
yeah, it's gotten to be so convoluted these days. Everything kind of has gotten so complicated and convoluted, and I don't know. Nothing's simple. Nothing is simple anymore.
No, I don't think anything is necessarily any different. It's different for sure, but the crux of human society is about the same. Human nature has not changed. It's just the information that we have now is so much more than it was even 10 years ago. The flow of information at this point is more than I think the average human brain can comprehend or be able to parse out any sort of information and figure out, like, is this real? Is this not real? Especially older generations. I think it's very, very difficult because, like, my parents, as an example, when they grew up, you had TV, 3 channels, maybe. And then,
I had 3 channels.
Radio. Yeah, but then you had radio, like, you didn't have anything.
Excuse me.
All of a sudden.
Sorry.
You didn't have anything else. And then now, the amount and the flow of information in a 24/7 news cycle, it's
mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's a lot. And in such a relatively short amount of time. For several hundred years, even just like a train was like a massive technological advancement.
Right.
We don't have wagon trains anymore. We have an actual steam powered locomotive, and that took several hundred years. And it's like, oh my God, oh, this is the future.
So
And
you don't
then,
think that human nature has changed at all?
no, not from like a broad perspective. No, I don't think it has at all. I just think that we hear about things sooner.
Yeah, that's true. Because I wonder about that sometimes. One of my favorite words is integrity.
Mhm.
And I found a quote about it. Let me see if I can find it. Yes. With courage, you will dare to take risks, have the strength to be compassionate, and the wisdom to be humble. Courage is the foundation of integrity. And that was on the Astrology Answers website. Excuse me. Just got a scratch in my throat. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Now, do you believe that courage is the foundation of integrity?
Hmm.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I'd have to analyze it to really kind of delve into it. I don't do very good at kind of surface observations.
Mhm.
Like I kind of I'll hear something, and sometimes certain things will just hit me, and it's like, oh, I've been thinking this for a long time, but that's a better way to say it. Or I've thought of something, and then I think of a good way to say it, and then there's other things that I haven't considered, and if I haven't like kind of guided my brain towards something, it takes me a bit. Um,
I think I
I
might be
would,
the same way.
yeah, because sometimes if like I drill down so deep into certain things, it takes me a while to pull myself back out of what I'm thinking of, and
Mhm.
then kind of recalibrate to what that next thing is. So sometimes it can be difficult for me to transition on thoughts. Um, but as far as what you were saying with courage being the
Ugh.
basis of integrity, um, I feel like it's in the generally in the right direction or the right sense.
Right.
Uh,
And how would you, just off the cuff, how would you define integrity? Or what do you think integrity is?
I think integrity would be of more or less of doing what you said you were going to do. I think
Absolutely.
it I think it would be of being an honorable person. So
Definitely.
if
Like your
you're
handshake would still mean something.
yeah, like kind of a word is your bond sort of a thing.
Mhm.
Um, of basically, I'm not going to be tempted to be a certain way based on external things. It's more of this is my internal course, and I'm going to
Mhm.
stick to that regardless of what happens.
Mhm. I like that.
So to me, that would be integrity. It would be kind of like a very sturdy ship that no matter what waters it's sailing through is going to maintain its course.
Absolutely. And you're somebody that people can depend on. When you say something, they know that you're going to follow through. Um, I find that people, and especially younger people, but not just younger people, a lot of people in this day and age don't seem to have that or don't seem to value that. And that was something that I was brought up on that was very, very important. I don't know who instilled it in me. I can't really think back to a moment that stands out, but like if you said, maybe it was my mom, because she always said to me, if you're going to do something and you know you're going to do it, say yes. If you're not sure you're going to do it, don't ever say yes. Say maybe. If you're not going to do it, just say no. But don't say yes to make somebody else feel better, because in the long run, you're going to make them feel bad anyway. But she used to say that to me, and she was always like that. She always had that when I was a kid. If I asked her for something and the answer wasn't yes and it was maybe, I knew I could always convert her to yes. But if she said no, forget about it. I didn't keep pushing because I know she would never, ever, ever change her mind. And maybe that's where I got it. Just that basic principle of doing what you say you're going to do and not disappointing people, or saying that you're going to do it to sound important or to make yourself sound good, and then having no intention of ever doing it to begin with.
Yeah, I think that well, it sounds like your mom definitely made a good point with you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I
She
think
was a good
also
mom.
too. Yeah, sounds like it. It seems like generationally things are a bit different because I know just certain aspects of like my grandparents' age, or listening to different things, or well, not necessarily listening, but reading different things. I'm big into history and different things. So reading throughout the course of human history, I think trust, and as you were talking about, integrity was so important because it had to do with survival. And now we don't have the survival attached with the honesty and the integrity. So it's more of it becomes more of a rare thing, I think. And also, too, with social media and just the internet, I could be communicating with somebody that I'll never meet in person. I'll never look them in the eye. I'll never shake their
Yeah.
hand. It's kind of like dealing with somebody in traffic. Like you just see a car and you're like, well, that car is being an ass. Screw that guy.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't necessarily think like, okay, well, there's a human being in that car that maybe is a family, that maybe they're going through a rough time, or maybe they are just a jerk, but it's still a human being that's in that car. The same as it's a human being that is, behind that avatar or that, account online. There's still a human being there. Now, if they're being a troll, it's a separate thing. But, you know, I just think it's a lot different because there's so much more anonymity in modern life than there was 50 years ago or 20 years ago. And
Yeah.
also, too, one thing that always strikes me is the sense of community. A sense of community, as far as you can find online communities and things like that, which is great because there's lots of really good things that can happen from that. But also, just as far as communities, like in a physical sense, of being really close with your neighbors or your neighborhood.
And see,
A lot of,
I came from a small town in Western New York, and everybody knew everybody. So maybe
yeah,
that's part of it. Like you were accountable. You had to be accountable for your shit,
right,
or
exactly.
everybody would think you were an asshole.
Yeah, exactly. And it was for cohesion of the group, of your community and things like that. And I think it was tied in more with like old school values of like,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not doing what you need to be doing and you're screwing up, like people are going to know, they're going to think you're an asshole. But also, like, going further back, it's a matter of survival. And I think we're so far away from that. And also just kind of a American diaspora, if you will, of people move all over the country and or all over the world. So you don't have like a bunch of family necessarily like super close physically to you.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
So you're not as connected in a certain sense than you would have been 50 years ago or 100 years ago, or several hundred years ago. Like, so those things I think make a big difference in the perception of integrity and honesty and things like that. But I think that's where it really speaks to the individual and where they're at in their growth. If they are not being as best as they can be of being honest and showing integrity, because to me that just shows that you have a lack of foundation and a lack of character if you're
Mm-hmm.
not doing those things when it's not a situation of survival or anything like that. Like, it's totally up to you to be what you want, especially this day and age. Like, there's so much freedom to be who and what you want to be or what you feel you are or whatever, which is fantastic. But I don't know if we've necessarily caught up with the other side of that. And I think that there's lots of really great things about modern society, of the freedom of things that, is really never, well, it has existed, but in very different ways in history. But also, I think you need to kind of marry the two of like, let's have that freedom and of self-expression and those sorts of things. But let's not reject everything of the past. Like, there's still
Right.
some good old school values that are there,
Absolutely.
but let's lose the toxic crappy stuff.
Right. Like
That,
racism and stuff like that.
yeah,
We've come so
let's,
far, in
right,
that realm, but
that kind of
like you
stuff.
said, we still those old fashioned values. You, you just can't replace that kind of stuff.
No, and I don't. I hate when I see certain things like that are just like, well, it's kind of a let's throw the baby out with the bathwater sort of a thing. Like, let's keep the good stuff, and then let's amend certain other things that maybe, have a bad connotation or whatever, but the underlying idea was good and it served people really well. Like, let's amend those things. That doesn't mean we need to throw everything out.
Right. Absolutely. It's like we need a new 10 commandments or something for people. Just something simple. I don't think they could do more than 10 things or listen to more than 10 things.
Well, we could just have three commandments.
Yeah.
We'll keep up with the modern attention span.
Yeah, for real. Blink. Well, another question I had for you, kind of back to the religious part. I found these two definitions of religion and spirituality on a website about having your spiritual awakening called lonerwolf.com. And the website defines spirituality as connecting to the divine through your own personal experiences. And they define religion as connecting to the divine through someone else's experience. I'm assuming they mean Jesus Christ. So you kind of answered this earlier, but would you consider yourself spiritual, religious, neither, or both?
Definitely more on the spiritual side of things.
Yeah. That's what I'm discovering too.
Yeah. That what you just said sums it up rather well. Because for me, growing up in a religious environment, a lot of it was driven by other people's, and this is centuries and millennia of other people's interpretations of what God is and what God means, and spirituality, all those things of other people telling me how I should think and feel about God and about that aspect of life. And for
and not
me,
to interrupt you, but I think that's one of the reasons I've always had a problem with religion is because I hate to be told what to do. I hate it. I will do the opposite just to not do what somebody told me what to tell. Not do what somebody told me. So yeah, as a kid, that was just it pissed me off from the get go.
Yeah, I'm similar to that. Maybe not as strong at willed as that, but definitely very similar. But that was the thing for me. Is I was about 14 years old or so, and I told my mom, I said I didn't want to go to church anymore, and I thought that was going to be like a very difficult time, and she was way more understanding than I thought she would be. And I think that because of the way that I brought it up, it was very well thought out. It was very mature for my age. It was very calm. It wasn't like, I don't want to go because I want to go play, video games or something. It was like, I don't want to go. And I listed out my reasons. And she just said, oh, you seem like you were so into it. I thought you enjoyed going. And I said, well, I did. And a couple of years ago, I was just like, I don't know why I'm here. There's no point to me being here. I'm wasting my time and your time and everybody's time. Like, this is doing me no good. And I think she was also kind of having some of her own doubts and things too, as far as where we were going to church and, different things like that. But that is the thing for me, is that as a human being, every single person on the planet that's ever existed or ever will exist, they all have their own path to go through. It's their own unique individual journey, and it should be between them and God. There can be certain religious texts. I mean, there's certain useful things that I find in the Bible. There's certain useful things that I find in the Talmud, or
there's good stuff in all of it. There's good little things in all of them.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And it's just the way that I always looked at it before I got, years ago, the way that I looked at it was, it's basically the same message, more or less, but it's different interpretations because of geographically where you were located. So that changes things considerably. But to me, it should be a very individualized thing. It should be your own journey, because it's your life. So if you're going to have a blanket statement on this is how everybody should be, to me, it's like, no, you're just running really large cults. Like, you shouldn't be masterminding or saying like, no, you've got to be this way and you've got to do these things. I've got the answers and I can get you there, but you've got to do this.
Right.
No, that's not how that should be. That is not freedom that God, I think, wants. I think
Have you ever done any research
open.
have you ever done any research on the like spiritual awakening type stuff?
I've just kind of gotten into that a little bit to understand more of that. I feel like I've had things like that because I've had some
Me
very
too.
powerful experiences in my life.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, things that I feel really deeply about or I've thought about really intensely, I'll later find terms to describe them. So that is one that if you want to explain a little bit more, I'd like to hear. Um, but I've just kind of just started rolling that back a little bit. So
Yeah, and I just started looking into it recently as well. I was on that website lonerwolf.com, has a lot of, explains a lot of it, but it's basically you know, different steps that you go through, but nobody really goes through them the same, and it's just finding your purpose and like aligning your soul with, that purpose, and basically realizing that most of what you've been told in your life is BS. Really listening to your own, your inner voice and your soul, trying to align all that till you're, what do they call it? Oh, they got a term for it. See, I'm not super knowledgeable in it either, but I think that's kind of the crux of it is as to when you get to the point where you feel like you understand the reason that you're here, and your soul is in harmony with that, and you don't worry about anything anybody else says, and you can just live your life in your own direction that you want to go. Just kind of my own summation of it, but
no, I think you said it pretty well. I think that is a lot of it. And the way that I always look at it is when I have something that I feel like I should deeply do, or something that just kind of happens in my head of like, I should go do this, but in a good way, not in an impetuous or, just kind of a dumb way, lack of a better term, but to just go with the things that move you. Like
mm-hmm.
I guess a good analogy I could make is my taste in music. When I was younger, I would worry about like, oh, I shouldn't listen to this because somebody will make fun of me for this. Or, if they hear me listen to
Mm-hmm.
this, well, that's not the cool thing to listen to, you know. One thing I got from my dad is he listened to, I mean, pretty much mostly everything. He didn't listen to like modern pop or anything like that. But um, one thing that was interesting is he had passed away a few weeks ago. And when we were at his visitation,
Sorry to hear that.
well, thank you. Um, even the priest that we had, he was taken aback because at the very beginning of the service, we were playing Vivaldi's Four Seasons Winter, which is, if you've ever heard it, is an incredible piece of music. I mean, all of Vivaldi's stuff is. But then at the very end, it was Johnny Cash was playing at the end, and he was saying, "Wow, what kind of incredible person would be able to listen to Vivaldi and appreciate that, but then also want Amazing Grace by Johnny Cash?" You
I
know,
love it. I love it. My dad would have loved it.
yeah, and that's the thing I think I got from a young age with my dad, was just like listen to whatever grabs you. Like there's certain things because my
Mm-hmm.
dad would listen to all kinds of stuff. It was a very eclectic mix of things. And so I grew up in
Yeah.
some of the
I think
stuff he
that's how
listened
I
to, some of the stuff
I
that he would listen to. I ended up listening to, and then I just picked up different
yeah.
things, and I listened to different things. And now today, I mean, I listen to all kinds of stuff, and I'm always looking for like, okay, I
Yeah,
know
me
what all
too.
this stuff is, but it's like I want something new and different and weird that I like, like something totally off the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's got a certain
Mm-hmm.
rhythm to it or a certain, kind of power or energy to it, it's like I want to find those things. So I just think that that's to me is such an important thing of just totally trying to find, what is that thing that is you? And to me, the best way to do that is just to
Mm.
follow your instincts in a very honest way. Like, you have to be very, very honest. And that's
Yeah. Your
what I like.
instincts and your intuition are everything.
Yeah. And what I like to say is to be brutally honest with yourself, to really dig down and dig deep into who you are and what you are as much as possible. And the more that you do that, especially, especially if you're younger, if you're older, you can still do those things, but it's going to be a lot easier to do that because you won't have as much heavy lifting.
Excuse me. Right.
So
Right.
that to me is the most important thing. Is if you're very, very honest with yourself, you're trying to be a good moral person, you're trying to do the right thing by other people, as much as you can, because there's a certain trade-off where you have to not worry about other people and you have to take care of yourself. But as much as possible, of honoring yourself, being good to yourself, and then trying to do that for others, to me, then you're heading in the right path.
I think I get a lot of my, go to the beat of your own drummer kind of thing from my dad, because my dad was a hippie. He went to the original Woodstock in 1969. I believe he was drafted for Vietnam, but he stayed out of it because he was enrolled at University of Buffalo, and he didn't believe in, fighting that kind of stuff. So thank God he didn't go, and that's probably why I'm here. Yeah, he listened to, I remember as a kid sitting on the living room floor and just looking through all of his albums and pulling out the albums and pulling out the sleeve and looking at the lyrics and just feeling the whole thing. I mean, I loved it. So I always listened to a lot of the same stuff as him, like mainly like classic rock and stuff like that. But then as a teenager, I remember him taking me to this outdoor concert, and it was a symphony. And, I'm sitting there looking at him like, or do you like this shit, Dad? But he was grooving to it. And I think, he let me realize that you could just do whatever you wanted, and it didn't matter. Because other people were kind of boring, you had to do what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
But,
we went to a classical concert. They were actually doing a Vivaldi's Four Seasons, and Dad was all excited to go. And so we went. This was several years ago, but we had a great time. And it was just funny because I'm like, this is the same guy that I grew up with. It's kind of that thing where it's like, all right, I knew you liked this, but you're really into this. It's kind of a neat thing, to discover a different side of somebody that you've known for so long and you love and care about. But then to see a different side of them like that is really neat, to see somebody as they really are.
How old was your dad when he passed?
He was 73.
Oh, nice. See, that's really nice. He really, I mean, even though he passed away, he got a long, that's a pretty long, good life. I think.
One thing that struck me the most is, as we were looking through pictures, is how much that he was smiling in like pretty much every picture.
That's
and
amazing.
I never really paid attention to that, just because, it was Dad and we're used to seeing him all the time. But like, every single picture, he's just got a big shit-eating grin on his face. Just happy. And, he'd always be going around telling stories to people, or, hey, did you hear this? Or here's a joke I heard, or whatever. And so many people that he made such a positive impact on. And it's something that I'm definitely carrying forward with me, as I
Absolutely. Always keep that sense of humor. That sense of humor is so important. My stepdad was like that. He was always, I just remember always laughing, and he had crinkles in the corner of his eyes. He was always laughing about something. He was always happy. I always think as a kid, like, what the fuck are you so happy about? But he was, he was happy. He was happy. He was happy for most of his life, but he unfortunately took his own life a few years back, but he had a bunch of stuff happen. And,
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it was kind of tough. And then my dad, my real dad himself, he died at 53. So he really got robbed, I feel, he didn't even get to know my daughter.
That was about the age that my wife's father, he passed away early 50s. He had a massive heart attack and died.
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah, that was definitely a rough time. But
yeah. You just don't expect that to happen. And I mean, I think I was 29 or 30 when he passed. And, I didn't even you don't even know what's going on yet. You just think, wow,
Right.
that's, your protector, your person you look up to for everything. And, now you just don't have them anymore. It's hard to come to terms with. I think it's been 20 years now since he died, and I don't get that upset anymore. I mean, time definitely heals to a certain extent. It never fully does, but you feel it gets easier, I guess. Is how I would say.
Yeah, I think you're a little bit further removed over time, and it's a little bit duller. Like you still miss the person, and you wish that they were there, and you feel certain things, but they're not as intense as they once were.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that to me is a comforting thought of, I believe that, like I was saying earlier, that we're all part of God, and we're all part of kind of the same fabric and things. So at a certain point, we'll all kind of be together again. It'll be different than this life for sure, but I think that it'll be even better than what we have currently. So to me, it's like it's bye, but it's bye for now. It's not bye forever.
I think I agree with you. Have you ever looked into numerology at all?
I had a guy that I used to work with that I was friends with, and he would talk about that, but I'm not super familiar with that.
It's real interesting. I started getting into it about, I don't know, maybe 6-8 months ago. And they have what's called your life path number. It's based on the month, day, and year that you were born, and it's calculated. There's life path numbers 1 through 9, and then there's 11, 22, and 33. And depending on what number you get, basically 1 through 9 is, a series of lives that you go through to get that far. So it's definitely based on learning lessons. Like each life is a lesson. Sometimes you have to go through the lessons more than, it takes more than one life to learn those lessons, If you ever get a chance, though, check it out. It's really interesting. Look up your, Google your life path number, and then you just put in your birth date and it'll tell you what it is. It'll tell you all about it, and see if it matches up to you, because I find I've done a whole bunch of them for my friends, and they are just, eerily spot on. It's crazy. And the numerology was first done by Pythagoras back in ancient Greece, is how it started.
Yeah, the Pythagorean theorem. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't that the triangle formula for the triangle or something?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I believe it is. Yeah, which is incredible. The amount.
I'm not a mathematician at all.
No, I'm not either. Math is not my strong suit. But
me neither.
Ancient Rome and stuff, there was a lot of things that were incredible things that were discovered then that still hold true to this day. So definitely a lot of time and effort spent on those things. But I think also too, one thing that's interesting with like ancient history to me is, if you think about like, well, how did these people come up with this stuff? They didn't know much of anything. Well, to me, it's like, no, they knew quite a bit, but they couldn't prove certain things maybe the same way that we can, or have the foundations that are built on the way that things are now. But the way that I look at it, like if you had literally all day to just think on stuff, there's no
right, because there was no TV, no radio, none of that crap.
Yeah, there's nothing else. So it's just you and your thoughts and other people that are thinking the same things, and just human ingenuity, just
having philosophical discussions among groups of people and whatnot.
Right, exactly. And, may or may not be some hallucinogenic teas at the time or what have you, and, just letting it rip. I don't know. I just think it would be, to me, it's an interesting thought of, I think we underestimate the ancients, if you will, that there was a lot more things that they knew or, discovered and proved to a certain extent as much as they could at the time. But I think it's kind of a disservice to underestimate people at that time.
I agree.
Just the simple fact of not having distractions, and like all you do is put everything, your entire life's work towards that, and there's nothing else.
And I think they were just they must have been so observant of just every little thing, every little change, every little nuance, because like you said, they weren't as distracted as we are, but not even close. And just, the moon and the stars and the sun and the tides and just everything they could equate to different things and, why it does that. And I don't know. I think that would have been a cool time to live
Yeah,
if they
I
had
agree.
toilet paper.
Now, if you're in, just jump in the ocean and you're good.
Yeah, I could have done that. I do love the ocean.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, even if, like when I was a kid, just taking, like, I was homeschooled and stuff. So, for part of the time, not the whole time, but like I was just able to sit and observe nature or observe ants or, observe the sun or, a cloud or whatever. Like it was just so much simpler.
It's
And then
nice.
you could kind of delve into things in such a different way than you could, now. Like even now, I'm just thinking
Now you
like,
just Google everything.
yeah, and it's constant
It takes
motion.
kind of takes the fun out of it.
Yeah, and just the pace of modern life and things. It's
Yeah.
you don't have that
When I
time
was
to
a
sit.
kid, right. When I was a kid, we had we didn't have 3 channels. We had 2 channels. We had a black and white TV. I'm not that about my parents. Like I said, were hippies and they weren't into like all the technology and shit like that. They didn't really care. So we had whatever they had, we didn't rush out to get the newest thing all the time. And I think that's good because I'm still not like that. I'm like 3 years behind. That's why this took me so long to figure out. I'm like 3 years behind regular technology. I catch up gradually, but, we had this old black and white TV. We had 2 channels that came in. We got NBC and CBS. We did not get ABC. So I was an only child. I didn't watch much TV because it sucked. And, I'd watch a couple things in the evening with my parents, but during the day, I'm not watching those soap operas and all that crap. So I was outside playing. That's all I did was I lived outside, and my parents would hardly be able to get me in, before it got dark. We had a little cemetery like a half mile down the street from my house, and I would ride my bike down there. And I'd play there for 6 straight hours. I'd climb all over the tombstones. I think I was maybe friends with some of the spirits in there. I was very imaginative and creative, and I had an excellent childhood. I wish my kids could have had the experience that I did. It was freaking wonderful. We lived in the country. It was just beautiful. It was great.
Yeah, it's very different nowadays for sure.
It sure is. Well, I know that you wanted to be done around 8, and I think we have gone over. I think we've gone over that, but I do feel like we sure have a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, we could see about trying again at some point.
Yeah, we could always do a part 2.
Yeah, I think it's gone well
It was,
so far.
yeah, I think it was really fun talking to you, and I love your
Yeah.
voice.
Oh, thank you.
It sounds like just on your it sounds just like it does on your podcasts.
Well, fantastic.
So everyone, if you want to hear Ross in action, pull up the Daru Project. How can our listeners find the Daru Project?
So all major podcast platforms, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of the other ones, it's the Daru DARU project. Also on Instagram and on Threads, Daru DARU _ project, and you can find me there as well as on Medium, which basically is transcripts from the podcast that are put into more of an article format on Medium.
That's interesting. I have yet to even do transcripts on my podcast. I haven't even had a time. I've looked into it, but it all seemed a little much. How is that Medium thing?
It's actually pretty cool. It's just there's lots of different articles, all sorts of different things, whatever you're into. So normally how I do my podcast is I'll write it out and then I record it and then I'll take that what I've written and then I'll just kind of transport it over to Medium and add some pictures and maybe some edits and things so that way it's more of like an article kind of appearance to it. But Medium is actually really good. There's lots of really good content on there, whatever it is that you're interested in reading about. But some people I know prefer to read as opposed to, listen to things. Kind of like we were talking about earlier with, people learn different
styles
ways.
of learning.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll look into that. Right. Well, to wrap it up, what is the main message that you would like to get out by doing the Daru Project?
The main thing that I want to get out is that God, the universe, and ourselves, we are all one thing. We are all part of the same fabric. God has experiences in a different way, but it's all the same for every living thing. It is all the same stuff. We're all the same fabric, and we need to come together as people and not be divided by things that society has created to put in our way. To love our fellow person as much as we can.
Absolutely.
And understanding about other people and ourselves. And ultimately to fulfill what our human potential is as individuals.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, that definitely brings up a couple other questions I had for you. So we should definitely look into doing a part 2.
Part 2 sounds good.
Okay, sounds good. So listen, people, for part 2 eventually. And thank you so much for listening to our show. Please check out our website at societaldeconstruction.com and rate and follow us. While you're there, please go to our review page. Leaving us a review helps us improve the podcast for your listening pleasure. Plus, we will look a lot cooler if we have more than one review. Thank you so much, Ross, for hanging out with SDP tonight. It was great having you on here.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Have a great night.
You too.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.